Welcome to the regular closed session of the EBMUD Board of Directors for March 25th, 2025. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan,
Present.
Director Gomez.
Here.
Director Katz.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Here.
Director Odie.
Here.
Director Smith.
Present.
President Young.
I am here. Oops. Missed it by a mile. Okay, we have two cards for public comment. Are there any online comments?
No online comments.
Okay, we'll come back to that after the in-person to see if there are any. As usual, instructions for speakers: when prompted, say your name, your affiliation if applicable, refrain from personal information, addresses or phone numbers, etc. The secretary will, well, no, I'll call you up and you have 3 minutes to speak. And the secretary will track your time. First up, Eric Larson, President, Local 444.
Thank you, President Young. Good morning, board members and General Manager Chan. My name is Eric Larson. I'm President of AFSCME Local 444. I want to speak just briefly on limited term classification positions. Limited term temporary employees are non-civil service status positions. If the board converts the position at a later date to a regular permanent position, under the current recruitment practices, that temporary employee who holds that temporary position must apply along with the entire universe of external candidates and compete for that permanent position once the position is converted to a permanent position. They are not automatically made permanent, and they do not ride in with that change, as I understand the process. Certainly, if there is a permanent position that becomes available, they must compete against the universe of external candidates. They do not automatically become regular. So if I am a limited term utility laborer and somebody else promotes from utility laborer and becomes a plumber or whatever position they go to, and then there's a vacancy in that utility, I don't automatically go into, I have to compete for that position. I have to fill out the application again against the whole universe and get on that list for the permanent position. We have a proposal at the negotiations table to provide a tiered set of hiring lists. First, a civil service hiring list, then a non-civil service hiring list for those temporary employees, and then go to an external list if there's nobody satisfactory in the civil service list or the temporary non-civil service list, then go to your external list. That would help with that concern. Separately, I want to talk about PEPRA members. Our PEPRA members, in 2013, the state legislated a two-tiered pension takeaway, reducing the pension benefit and increasing the age for retirement and shifting the cost of the pension system to the employees. Today, the PEPRA member employees cost the district 9% less. And in July, their contribution rates will increase to 10.17%. The board should put that 9% savings into an employer-paid retiree health care plan. This will significantly help with recruitment and retention. Overwhelmingly, our members have told us they want a lifetime medical like other agencies have. PEPRA members are also contributing more into their pension, and they need to be made whole for that additional contribution through longevity wage increases or a 401k contribution incentive. Please consider those proposals as you discuss with the labor negotiators. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Michael Morgan. Actually, let me just ask, I think we need some clarification on the point about moving from LT.
I was sharing information I got from Vince James, who's in the back right now, but as it was my understanding that we hire the LTs off the permanent list. So we'll provide some information.
Let's run this down and get it clear if somebody comes from a list that's qualified for permanent, how it works.
Yeah.
They become an LT.
We'll provide backup.
Okay. Michael Morgan.
Hello again, Board of Directors and General Manager Chan. I would like to speak about the issues with standby scheduling and the rate of pay associated with it. It is well understood that emergencies happen, and often these emergencies don't happen on our regular business hours. For this, the district has standby assignments for some of our work groups to ensure that we keep the public safe and have minimal loss in water service and resources. But this requires workers to be able to respond any day and at any time. This is very taxing on people's lives, with having to miss out on family events and disrupt sleep schedules, and are unable to plan anything for the time they are on standby, for the possibility of the phone ringing and having to respond ASAP. This creates issues when the district mandates this responsibility onto the workers last minute. We have current language in our 444 contract that states that the district shall schedule its standby needs at least 2 months in advance. We feel this is sufficient time to be able to make plans or be able to make educated decisions on when the employee can choose to be available, but the issue still comes when the schedule is made and then something happens, like a promotion to a different classification or a retirement or a job injury happens. When the vacancy occurs on the standby list, the district feels it is okay to just mandate an employee to be on standby with threat of discipline if they don't comply, usually with less than a week's notice. This is unfair to workers who have obligations outside of work with inadequate time to rearrange their plans. 444 has a proposal on the table to help address this issue. We are okay with asking for volunteers in these situations, which can be helped with our standby rate of pay proposal, but the mandating with too short of notification is unacceptable, and I encourage the board to consider the proposal on the table that the district cannot mandate employees to be on standby with less than 2 months' notice. With the standby rate of pay, at a quick glance, 25% seems to be a decent amount to help incentivize workers to put their life on hold to be able to respond for an emergency. But the way the district has learned to make the calculation at just 8%, it has made employees feel that they are being underpaid for it, and when it comes time to sign up for standby again, they are less likely to volunteer. The union's proposal to clean up and clarify the language would be beneficial to the workers and to the district to ensure these standby positions are filled with willing and capable people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, any commenters online? All right, with that, we will adjourn to conference room 8 to discuss closed session items 1 through 3, and we are scheduled to return at 1:15. However, please check the website to see if there are any changes in that. Okay, welcome to the Tuesday, March 25th, regular session meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Could we please have roll call?
Can you please make the announcements from the committees first?
What?
Oh, it's in the wrong place.
No, we're doing roll
Director,
call.
thank you. Director
Wait a
Chan,
minute.
hold on. Director Chan?
Here.
Director Gomez?
Here.
Director Katz?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director Odie?
Here.
Director Smith?
Present.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We'll now move on to public comment. Wait, what am I missing?
Where, are you at the,
Oh, I'm,
you at the top, you need to be at the bottom.
we will receive a report from this morning's budget workshop number 2 and the Finance Administration Committee prior to considering the consent calendar. What am I missing? What am I?
Right down here.
I know. I did that. I did that.
You did.
We did that. And I did the thing, I went back and did the announcement. Okay. I was gonna get there. Just hadn't turned the page yet.
It's been a rough day.
Sorry, I started out with my radiator blowing out. Okay, we do have some proposed updates to 2025 assignments for committees, joint power authorities, and associations. The 2025 assignments for board committees, joint powers, and associations are included in your agenda materials. The assignments are being updated merely to reflect a change in the Finance Administration Chair. Director Lewis will assume the role as chair. Are there any questions or comments on the proposed assignments?
I'll move approval.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Director Lewis. And thank you for your service, Director Katz. We have no announcements from closed session.
I'm sorry. Actually, we do have an announcement. I wasn't able to print it for you in the couple of minutes. that
Oh,
we had.
right,
But I'm happy to read it if you'd like,
well, I guess I can say what
or if
it,
you want to wing it, sure.
I can wing it. The board did agree to enter into, actually, what did, in a matter, actually, I don't know what the.
So you met this morning in closed session to authorize the general counsel to initiate litigation in one matter. All directors were present, and all directors voted to authorize the general counsel to initiate litigation in one matter. The action, parties, and other particulars will be disclosed upon inquiry once the action is formally commenced.
Thank you. That's what we did. Okay. And I did know that. We just don't make very many announcements from closed session. I don't have it memorized in my head. Okay, we will now move on to public comment. If there are members of the public online who wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please do use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. We will hear comments on non-agenda items now. Comments on agenda items will be heard when that item is up for consideration. Do we have anyone in the online?
No online public comment?
Okay, and do I have any, I don't have any cards for public comment? No. Really? Okay. Now or never, anybody that has public comment on non-agenda items, please come forward and give the secretary a blue card. Okay, we will, Eric, are you getting a blue card? You don't know, okay, we'll give him a second. Okay, he could have come back if he was getting a blue card at this point. We will move on to committee reports. There's no action required. The minutes for the March 11th Planning and Legislative Planning and the Legislative and Human Resources Committee meetings are provided in the agenda materials for today. We did have our second budget workshop this morning. Staff reviewed the district's fiscal year budget for 26 and 27, including revenues, operating expenses, debt service, and capital projects, and made recommended revisions to the water and wastewater schedule of rates and charges subject to Prop 218, which will be mailed out to all property owners soon. Information on changes to the proposed budget from the plan presented at Budget Workshop Number 1 on January 28th, 2025 were also submitted. There will be a number of community meetings coming up, as well as a Water Wednesday webinar to share and do outreach on the budget. For those that are interested in attending, who should they send an inquiry to?
About the community meetings?
Yes,
To have it sent to Mona Favorite Hill.
okay.
But maybe start with the secretary of the district, and then we can always route it around.
Okay, so send an email to what?
Please look at the board meetings webpage, and there is a general email address,
Okay,
secoffice@ebmud.com.
okay, you will also be able to find that schedule of meetings on the website. Thank you. And now we'll receive an update from Director Lewis on this morning's Finance and Administration Committee meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Finance Administration Committee met today. All members were present. We heard the monthly investment transactions report, which is item 8 on the consent calendar. We also discussed proposed revisions to policy 4.14, which is reimbursement of director expenses. The committee did want to share a couple of their thoughts, and we assume this will undergo additional discussion with the board. There's a recommendation to delete the mileage reimbursement for attending regular, adjourned, regular, special, and committee meetings of the board. The committee wanted to ensure that this deletion applied only to regular board meetings to the extent that board members were reporting here to what we consider our offices. We thought it was especially important to note that EBMUD has no other employees who receive reimbursement for reporting to their regular places of business. We also discussed limiting reimbursement for attendance to only one conference per year. There was some concern that this was a little over-restrictive. The committee suggests language which says only one committee, only one conference and/or conferences as approved. There was also a discussion.
Can you say that one again? Sorry.
Wanted to open this up instead of one conference per year that requires significant travel or lodging to approved conference per year. The concern was that folks who participate in, let's say, a panel or as a speaker might not be able to participate if it involved travel. We noted that most of these opportunities, there is reimbursement certainly for registration, et cetera. But we are cognizant of the impact on budget, but wanted to have, wanted it noted that one might be too confining. We also discussed, we wanted to ensure that good cause language in case a board member fails to cancel travel in a sufficient time and that we incur any kind of cost that's not reimbursable or that we can't recover, that good cause apply in those situations, especially air travel. Right now, I think that language is limited to.
So right now, the good cause includes but not limited to a director's illness, family emergency, or schedule conflict directly related to the business and interests of the district. So if the cancellation is due to a good cause, what the committee had suggested was the director wouldn't have to be responsible for reimbursing for those reasons. But those are just 3 examples. There may be others.
Right. And last but not least, we wanted to recommend that the approval amount without presidential improvement be raised from $100, which it's been for a number of years, to $250. The rationale being that, unfortunately, that seems to be the going rate for a lot of ticket and items at this point in time. That's our report. This item is item 10, and it's under determination and discussion.
I'd like to pull the item for consideration at our next board meeting.
It's on the agenda this afternoon.
Yeah.
Or you don't want to discuss it today?
I think the committee made significant recommendations that I would like the opportunity to better understand prior to making a determination today.
So when the item is up for consideration under the agenda, I think the board can vote to table
We can
it
table it
to
when
the next meeting, but I believe that would, under Sturgis, require a vote.
Okay.
So prior to submitting our report, were there any questions?
No, thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the consent calendar. We do have a request to pull item 7. Do I have a motion for items 1 through 6, 8, and 9?
Also move. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 7, so on paving, I have a, do we want to have a presentation before?
No presentation if you want to hear from the speaker.
Okay. Eric Larson?
Good afternoon, President Young and board members. My name is Eric Larson, and President AFSCME Local 444. We object to contracting out our core bargaining unit work, including paving and related services. We do appreciate that staff have made an effort to control costs and limit increases. We've seen this contracts escalating year after year over the past decade, and the staff have been meaningfully controlling those costs, but still $5.2 million is quite a lot of FM&O related contracting out of our paving services. We recognize the efficiencies of joint paving projects. We're working with the cities where the cities are going to pave the streets anyways, and to pay liquidated damages or whatever they call it, damages for the repaving the streets when the cities are going to pave those streets anyways. Nonetheless, 444 contends that adding 2 additional paving crews would substantially reduce reliance on contracting out, especially for extensions, which is paving after the pipeline replacement has taken place. The district have been intent on continuing to contract out all the extension works and maintain the patch paving in-house. We do appreciate that the patch paving is being kept in-house. We do think that the contracting out the extensions, much of that work can be done by AFSCME 444 forces. So we object to contracting out our core bargaining unit work and recommend a reduced contract amount equivalent to the cost of 2 additional paving crews that could perform that work in-house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Eric, for that. You know, one of the things we discussed with the unions several years ago was to keep that contract amount constant. You can know in the BD1 for the prior 3 years, and even this time we've held it around $5 million, and that hasn't really changed. Last year too, I mean, the other thing that we've discussed, these Eric mentioned these joint paving projects. This is where the city is going to be paving the street, and we pay them for that. And the unions had previously just noted that that's not something they object to. Last year, 96% of the paving work on these extensions were joint paving projects. So that's where the city has, and we entered into these joint contracts. And so we feel that what we have done is what we had told the unions. We were going to keep the contract amount constant, which we have done.
Okay, any questions for the GM or comments? Director Odie?
I just have a quick question. Have we compared the cost of, was it two paving crews versus the cost of these additional contracts and kind of then a cost-benefit analysis?
I mean, in round numbers, not including the equipment, you know, each paving crew is about 5 people, so that's 10 people. So it'd be, in rough numbers, including benefits, it'd be about $2.5 million for 10 staff, not including the equipment. But again, you know, whether you have the staff or not, you know, this is going, the money, you know, the money on these contracts goes to paying the cities as part of the joint paving project. So, you know, if the city says we're going to pave the streets, you know, we can have the crews, but, you know, if the money is going towards the city's doing it, there's not a lot else to do.
And do we know if these contracted pavers, do we know if they're part of a bargaining unit or are they non-represented or?
I don't know if they're union. I mean, these are the same, so the cities, so what happens is that the city has the paving contractor and we pay the city, and then the city does the paving through their, the city doesn't have their own paving crews. They contracted out, and we just pay the city, and they hired the contractor.
So to the extent that, would it be correct, to the extent that a city has a PLA or I mean, we don't have control
Yeah,
over.
and we don't even know what the limit is. I mean, I'll just say, I mean, I just have a aversion to outsourcing collective bargaining jobs to a contractor that may not be a union contractor, so that's just my concern, and I'm gonna continue to raise that as these come, and expect more information in the
Well,
future.
but just so I understand, the issue here, though, is that the city is in charge of deciding how their streets are paved and will decide to pave, we have 2 feet of street, a line of 2 feet, and then the city has the rest of it.
I understand that. But
Yeah,
if we're contracting
We're
to a
not
contract,
contracting,
and
we're
if we're
reimbursing
paying
the
a
city.
contractor and that contractor is not a union contractor employed by that city, I would like to know that when these things are being brought in front of us.
But we're not paying the contractors, we're paying the city.
Who could be paying a non-union contractor?
I mean, I can find out who the cities are using,
I'm
but
gonna abstain on this because I just have an aversion to, contracting out, so outsourcing. So I'll just leave it at that.
okay.
Okay. We need a motion and a second. We didn't get that yet. I'll move that we adopt item 7.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. No? Abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain.
2 abstains. Okay, motion passes with 5 votes yes.
I'd like to state for the record that I considered abstaining and may not vote for similar contracts in the future. We had a very successful process moving fully maintained and operated agreements from a higher level of contracting out to contracting in through a prior budget process. This is more complex because we have intergovernmental relations, but this is a significant amount of money, and I would like to see some study of this issue at the Leg HR Committee, and to be ready for either a mid-budget cycle amendment about staffing or to inform our next budget cycle. So I'd like to hear about this over the course of the next year.
Okay. Just to be clear, you said 96% of the
In fiscal
work
year-
covered under this item
fiscal year
is
'24,
joint paving
or joint paving.
work with cities where we're using this money to reimburse the city.
And, yeah,
Cities,
cities.
many, multiple cities.
And just, I know all of you know this, but, that is not an asset we own. So, if the city wants to pave their own streets, we don't just go in there and say, well, we hear you, but we're going to pave it anyway. It doesn't work that way.
Which is why we didn't vote.
Yeah, I see the aggregate now. I think some mechanism of being able to track how much is going to the public agencies compared to the other companies would.
We have that. So you could provide an information.
Provide
memo.
additional information, and we can bring it to the committee.
Okay,
President?
yes.
To the extent possible, as we enter into these agreements, is it possible, at least certainly while we may not control the contracting, to indicate in our agreement that we request that where possible, these agencies or cities consider the use of union labor,
Yeah.
which I'm sure they probably do, but.
Well, given that, even that our own agency does not have that as a preference, I think we should be, it is another issue, but I'd be very careful about telling a city that we think they should use a union contractor when we don't say we should use a union contractor.
Only that they
So-
consider.
So I mean,
But
again, that's
I
a
take
topic
your
for another
comment.
day.
I take your comment that's an excellent point.
So let's move on to determination and discussion. General Manager
Yeah,
Chan?
so the first item is the policy 4.14 that President Young, you asked for this item to be pulled. Just noting that, we're not voting on adopting the policy, it's more to get additional feedback from the rest of the board, but we could bring it back to another board meeting if you like.
I would like to, my own personal, there was a lot of changes made. We could discuss it. I would prefer to be able to share my thoughts about the policy after being able to give consideration to the changes that were discussed by the Finance Committee. So we can have more discussion. I would vote against, proceeding. I'd like to have another shot at discussion before we make a determination or change on the policy.
Understood.
I have a discussion point really fast. As far as the conference policy, I think it would be useful to have information about what similar agencies in our area are doing relative to relative to conferences and what their policy is. So is that some information we could get when we come back?
I'd have to do a little research, but yes.
Okay.
I think ultimately the concern was that everybody may or may not be aware of the one conference to the extent that there is a designated budget that gave some guidance and control, that would still be in place, but that if there was a request to attend more than one conference, that it still go through an approval process. That was the discussion and the recommendation. Not really a significant change other than it loosened up the one. And like I said, the big concern was with regard to people who are asked to speak or serve on panels, but this might not accommodate that.
I would say that this doesn't cover that, and that in most cases, when somebody is invited to be a presenter, that if they would not otherwise be attending, that the convener of the conference should be, footing the bill for that.
And that was acknowledged, although I think people are aware of there are organizations that might be unable to do so that we might still want to be present at. But that's
We're talking about conferences that require travel and lodging expenses, right?
Okay.
So I don't know.
Sounds like more discussion.
I'm not gonna, if somebody says, hey, we have a conference in Palm Springs we really want you to speak at, and it's only gonna cost your agency $1,000 to send you to be on a panel, as president, I'd kind of be inclined to say, sorry. No.
Yeah.
That's my inclination. Unless it's like the governor or something.
I think there are organizations, small organizations, diverse organizations that may in fact pick up registration, et cetera, but traditionally may not always have supplied or provided transportation. But anyway, those were the thoughts, and it wasn't that, it was just the thought that one might be confining also to the extent that you had to be able to identify that at the beginning of the year when you might not be aware of.
Yeah, I actually had a concern about having to know something at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
It's the fiscal year though, right?
Yeah, it is a fiscal year, but I would say even quarterly would be fine.
And as far as the good cause, we didn't really think that was a language. We just wanted clarification that good cause is defined, applied in all these situations. It wasn't specifically addressed as to this travel. The example was when we have folks literally sitting at an airport and they get a call that there's a serious family member's health issue or someone, as we were aware of, died. Or you're sitting on the Bay Bridge on your way to the airport and something gets shut down. So we just wanted to make sure that the existing language for good cause was applicable to this situation. So I don't think that was a significant change. And then I think the committee was fairly flexible on the one, we were told the recommendation for the ticket was 150 to 200. We were seeing a lot more 250. We thought it just made sense to have a little more flexibility.
Could we get a rundown of that? To me, that's an anecdotal observation.
Yeah,
It's not
true.
supported by data. I'd like to see something supported by data that says that the average of expense to attend meetings and conferences has gone
Yeah,
up to.
we could
you know.
provide that information. I'll also note that we did look back, and the $100 cap was added back in 2013.
So the recommendation the committee got was 150 to 200. And it was just our recommendation that we go ahead and say 250, but nobody was having heartburn over 200 either.
Oh,
Okay.
you're saying it all adds up pretty fast.
Yeah, so I had suggested an inflation adjustment and then without calculating throughout the 150 to 200 range. And then we were advised by our district secretary that 250 was a common ticket price number. So we took that information under advisement and that persuaded the committee.
That doesn't require approval, but you're saying 250, if you want to go to something that costs 250 or less, you don't need the president's approval to go, right?
That's what that
That's
threshold is.
basically
That's what that would
says.
mean.
Yes,
So-
that's what that would mean.
I don't know, Risha, do the math for me. How much does that mean?
If everybody went to, it,
Everybody went to everything that cost $250 and didn't need any review by anybody else. If you were odd, I'm just, you know,
Well, again, what was the recommendation? Because we were told either between 150 and 200, and based on what we were seeing, that was anecdotal. It was an anecdotal decision, but what we were given to review this morning was a recommendation that we raise it 150 to 200.
I don't think we had a formal recommendation. I think I had raised the issue to make some adjustment. And then our district secretary offered from, I think it's more than anecdotal because it's direct, frequent experience, but it's not a full accounting of all incidents.
to me, the point isn't what do things cost, but what the nature of is when something should be reviewed by, I mean, the president has actually very few duties. Approving expenditures by other board members is one of them, to make sure that there's some not hold isn't the right word, but some
Quality
check,
control.
some check
Quality
on,
control.
and accountability of expenditures. And, I wouldn't think that, anybody on this board is, gonna go hog wild and go to every, chicken dinner that's available for $250 in the district that we might get invited to. We get invited to lots of things. Not all of them are relevant to our duties.
can I make a comment at this time?
Yeah.
For $250, the district sponsors certain agencies. If we don't purchase a table for their event, then we have the alternative to purchase a ticket. And sometimes those tickets, the last few times, those tickets are $250.
And how often does the president disapprove those expenditures?
The president has not
Okay.
recently. But if we don't sponsor the event and we already pay $2,500 to $5,000 for a table, then the board members have the option of getting an individual ticket. And when those individual tickets are more than $100, then we have to request the board president's approval. And
Right, which but there are, I'm not thinking about those events. I'm thinking about other events that happen frequently by lots of entities that are not necessarily entities that we have traditionally supported. And, I don't know, I think it's appropriate for the public, for our customers to know that board members don't use their dollars to build their social networks or their political networks or their issue networks, that if a board member is attending something, it's because there's a legitimate reason for East Bay MUD to be present and accounted for at that this board member wants to help fulfill. And this is part of why I didn't want to talk about this today. Some of that accountability that's part of what the president needs to be responsible for doing.
So I just need, I'm unclear. Do you think that it should stay the $100? Do you think it should stay, or there should be additional guidance and or stay the $100? So I'm unclear.
No, I
Or
think
do
it
you
should-
have a recommendation?
I don't think it needs to change.
So I actually requested the floor on a different issue, but this happened when it got to me. This is what we were discussing. I would say that we should change it because we adopted this number in 2013. I could have sworn that it was $100 when I joined the board in 2007, but it may have been originally, I don't know exactly what number it is, but, or when it started. But I think an inflation adjustment to 150 would be the bare minimum just to keep it current. But the committee did have a discussion and resulted in a consensus of a higher number. And I think the board could, based on all these arguments that we've just had, settle on a number. And I think the purpose of the board president in being a check on abuse is really important. The importance of having a smooth process is also sometimes important because individual members' schedules change, and sometimes reserving a ticket in advance is not reasonable and could cause waste. So there's a balance to those things, and that's what that number, I think, is meant to strike. So that's an.
I'm confused.
I was just summarizing some of the purposes for
You're
settling
saying
on
that
that.
somebody shows up and they write a personal check for $200 or
Whatever-
whatever the
whatever
number
the
is,
number
that
is,
they're
it could be.
automatically gonna get reimbursed and the president has,
So, yeah, the current policy is $100. It still has to be reasonable and consistent with the district policy to be reimbursable. If it's not, then the president can reject it.
okay,
But there's another institution that assists transparency, and that's all of our expenses over a threshold. And I think Derek can confirm what that threshold is. Thanks. Yeah, so all expenses over that amount are reported on an annual finance committee report. And that goes for every employee at the district has those expenses and reimbursements actually reported publicly. So that's another way that there's transparency.
transparency and accountability are two different things.
They support each other. So what I did want to address other topics, but if the board president wants to stay on this topic, I can yield.
Before we leave this topic, I do want to say one more thing, if we're going to leave the topic. Clifford, I feel like it is really important to get some comparison data on what the policies are for surrounding agencies in this area, water agencies, and their policies on conferences. I know you said you would try, but it's something I wanted to stress because I feel like that's an important component in considering this policy.
Yeah, my recollection when we spoke, you also asked, you want to know what the budget was for other agencies too, so I have that on my list to do as well.
Thank you so much.
But the budget, again, budget and accountability are two different things. So we're talking about the approval policies, and we're talking about the budget.
Yeah.
And they're different. Those are different things.
So, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I know some jurisdictions say, okay, each each director, each council member would have a certain amount of money. Like I know with San Leandro, it's $10,000 a person. But I think that that's probably not every agency has different policies. So I think we need to weigh in what is the norm in this discussion.
So it sounds like the conversation is either about the money or about the why are we attending the meetings that we would like to attend. And I'm hearing the accountability concern related to what it is that's the content of that which we would like to attend. So in the purpose and scope of the policy, it states that the director is encouraged to participate in outside activities and organizations that further the interests of the district. So I think the policy already states the intent of what it is that we're supposed to be doing as directors. And so, yes, I agree that the president needs to have some say above a certain threshold, but I also agree that we're all abiding by the overall purpose of the policy, which is that it furthers the district's concerns. So I would like to, so are we at a point where we're proposing actual amounts and things like that today, or are we gonna come back later with more information to make a decision later?
So today, we're just receiving information. Based on the proposed changes, we're going to incorporate that information into further red lines and bring those back to a future meeting for further discussion and an actual vote. And it may be that we piecemeal the vote on each line item and have discussion over each one.
But I think what I'm hearing, I think we can even get to our red line document, I think what I'm hearing from President Young and, Director Chan is also asking for some additional information. So I don't know if we're ready to have a red line on this. I think what we're ready to do is prepare a memo with some of the additional information that's being requested and then the edits that were proposed by the committee, and then have a further discussion on this. I don't think we're quite ready for a new red line.
Yeah, I mean, the mileage change that, is fine. So I heard, what are other agencies doing
there
in
was
terms
no
of their budgets and approval policies? Is that correct?
Well, the proposed mileage change was just to delete the mileage reimbursement, and we wanted to ensure that it related only to attending any of those meetings here. Yes.
Yes.
And if I may propose, you might want to consider, just for simplification, to allow reimbursements within the service area, given that we have special meetings, for instance, up on Skyline Boulevard for the retreat, whereas
Well,
upcountry we
if
have.
staff can submit mileage reimbursement for going to regular meetings that they have outside of district headquarters, which I know even our general manager does, then a board member should be able to get reimbursed for traveling out to someplace that's outside of their ward. So, other than coming here for meetings, then I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So real quick, I do think that having a budget is a good idea. I mean, in Alameda, I think we had $500 a year. That's not a lot of money, especially if you get 2 tickets for $250, but at least that's some cap. So maybe some combination you might propose of a budget and a cap. If you reach a budget, then it needs to be approved. I don't know, just something to think about.
6,500, I believe.
Yeah, I mean.
Although this was on local meetings, not
Yeah.
out
Oh,
of
I
city,
see.
out of area conferences.
Yeah, I
I
don't
think
think
that's a totally
any
separate
out-of-state,
issue.
Okay.
any out-of-state travel
I
will
see.
require the president's approval
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any issue maintaining
that
that.
makes sense.
and will normally be denied.
Yeah, our concern,
I will
our
normally
concern was
deny it.
if you use your one shot in August, then you find out in March there's something that you really think you want to be there and you didn't know about.
Yeah.
What are you going to do,
Yeah,
right?
which is why, we're trying to provide all that in advance, not that we know everything. Just so the board knows, we had the budget discussion this morning. So what's in the current budget for board member training and conferences is $6,250 per board member.
Okay. I mean, maybe we somehow combine that with these local meetings because, some of those, we don't go willy-nilly. I mean, 4 hours out of your day after you work, after we have an all-day meeting the previous day, to do that, I've done it 3 times in the last 2 weeks. it can get a little tiring, so we're not kind of raising our hand and begging to, go to all these events, 2 or 3 times a week, so.
Part of our job.
It's part of our job, but, if we don't have to go, we don't have to go, right? So, I enjoyed listening to the Mayor of San Leandro talk for an hour and 15 minutes, but, I'm not gonna do that every month, right? So, and then I do agree, I think Director Chen, if the staff has a mileage policy, we should follow that, because we shouldn't be any different, right? We shouldn't get anything extra. And one thing maybe to think about is if it's a chore for some folks to go, maybe we consider having, meetings out in the communities, like when in Richmond or San Ramon or something someday, but that's a story for another day.
And President Young, with regard to the clarifying language, it was just to ensure that it already existing language, basically it was that travel cancellations not reported in time and without good cause. So not significant, we just wanted to ensure that the existing language that was clear and applied to such situations.
Right, I think this mainly actually refers to local events that people say they want to go to and then don't show up for.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to,
Right, that's the principal occasion, and there's been at least a few times when people have said they're gonna be at the mayor's conference and didn't go, and it costs us $70 for dinner.
Yeah, but it said travel cancellation, so we just wanted to
Yeah, I don't,
ensure that we were being consistent, that's all. I don't think that was overly significant, but we just wanted to make sure it was consistent and clear that the same standard and definition applied.
So I can, Director Pat, sorry.
Yeah, to come in on the other issues that I had thought about before yielding. On the conference issue, I recall our committee discussion not landing on a specific, rule that would, be the proposal, or else, it would have been prepared for today. But that we had a good discussion about proportionality within the budget, and that was a guiding principle. And but we were not in agreement with a strict one conference approach, and that we wanted to support directors engaging in educational value of the conferences, but finding what are those best practices across agencies that give guidance to the board chair for the controlling abuse and the like. So.
It would still include the president's approval and review and approval.
I just want to ask Director Katz a clarifying question, if I could, about proportionality of budget. What was that?
Yeah, I think that needs more explanation. So in my view, it can vary, over the long run, how many conferences it's reasonable to attend. I think, as a newer director, I found a lot of benefit in, things like the Water Education Foundation's Bay Delta Tour, which had a lot of benefit to our functions at the district. We used to sponsor an annual water policy conference that I think had great value. We no longer organize that conference, but similar things happen through. It's not the same, but Aqua does their programming and CASA does important programming. And I think that is, there could be an outside, declining marginal returns, over time. And I think that, newer directors will achieve that. But I'm very supportive of other, of all directors, accessing conferences to share our mission and values with other participants at conferences, whether that be just as an attendee and participant, but even more so if someone is, in an honored position to be speaking on a panel. I find that in our roles and capacities, we're rarely sponsored, by an outside entity. We're simply not that important, as much as we might like to think so. So I think we have a net value in sharing our agency accomplishments and our ideas on panels and opportunities like that when the invitations arise. But I really think the value is more in the engagement and learning that we take back to our role, and from the sharing that happens participant to participant across the communities that are attending. So I'm supportive of the conferences, but I think we do need. I'm not quite sure what the problem that we're trying to solve is on the conferences. If we in the past, I do recall a board president looking at the utilization of all of the directors and noticing that one director was utilizing closer in the 9,000 range, and had a conversation with that director about what was the value, and things evened out after that. But many directors were utilizing in the $2,000 to $4,000 range, and but at any time it may be reasonable for somebody to use more of their proportionate share of the budget, just because of the opportunity to get that engagement and benefit. So it's really hard to draw a strict rule on this, and I think the best rule is reasonable and proportionate use of the budget.
Right.
So-
And I agree with all of that. I know that I went to conferences within the first 2 years, and this year, I don't really foresee myself going to conferences or next year, because I felt like I derived a lot of the benefit in the last 2 years, and there's new members that would benefit from those conferences. So I think, I mean, there is something to be said that at the beginning of your term, these conferences are really useful, and maybe that dies down, maybe go to less conferences as the longer you're on the board.
I am a big fan of people having continuing education, and I don't see this post says may be reimbursed. Which means there's a sort of an expectation that you'll be reimbursed for at least one conference a year. If you went to every conference that Aqua sponsored, it would be well into the tens of thousands of dollars. Going to the DC conference, all the, every conference that Aqua has. And then you add the water education. I mean, I'm not saying that any or all of it isn't valuable, but I think, we need to be mindful of, which things that we can participate in. So if, I was sort of thinking about this in the terms of, sort of having some conversations about what would be valuable. Because you don't necessarily know as a new board member which things are really going to be, sort of valuable or not. So the idea of setting out, here's what I'd like to do this year. And if it's more than one, it's sort of like, let's have a conversation about what makes sense to do. So I'm not thinking that it's proposed as being, the mileage thing, that to me, it's just like common sense. It's like what's good for staff should be good for us. But the rest of it, if you serve on a joint powers authority or, any of these things, and there's a conference that is germane to that point, or if you've been, if you've been an advocate for affordability and want to learn more about what's the latest thing that's happening on that, it makes sense to be able to go to that conference if it's somewhere. Conferences that are local, if you are a speaker, my experience actually is that you'll get comped for your meal or whatever some of the other costs are just to present on a panel. If you're traveling someplace for lodging, it's a discussion, it's a conversation to have about value. I'm not gonna, I or any other president isn't just gonna say, oh, nope, you did one, that's it. It's just about trying to have some measure of, again, sort of accountability, predictability.
I'll just tell you, I spoke on a panel, remember, for the water, for the law, and I handed them my almost $20 parking ticket, and they looked at me like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I left with my own parking ticket and my own mileage, so, I paid to share my knowledge, so
Well, and that's
I understand what
completely
you're.
reimbursable, yes.
They didn't reimburse me.
No, by us.
Okay, but I'm just saying, I am aware that there are organizations and smaller organizations and diverse organizations that do have conferences from time to time. And I think it's an honor and an opportunity for us to go and make them aware of this. I don't know that that's to say I'm going to be invited to speak or not speak at one, but I know they exist and that those organizations often, other than your registration, don't give you squat.
Yeah, no. And locally, I got no problem. I mean, when it comes to getting on an airplane and staying in a hotel, that's what I'm talking. That's to me, that's when you start incurring the significant expense. It's not about mileage and
It might be a Southwest flight to Southern California. I really don't know, but those were just our thoughts. Those were the things that came up during the discussion. I think the committee had some really good thoughts. It sounds like, the board has some good thoughts. You certainly have some really good thoughts and experience behind this. So I think with that seems to be the issue that's generating the most discussion. The other things seem to be fairly perfunctory I think that's fair to say. So.
Anybody else have anything to say? You have direction?
Yeah, so I'm going to come back with just the information requested, and then we'll have continuous discussion and to get direction from the board on the edits to policy 4.14.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. So next is a discussion on the single-family residential accounts arrears management program, and just maybe a little background for the board. Back in December.
Actually, hang on a second. This is noted as a action item?
No, yeah, I think,
It
I think
is
we,
on
I know, no, I know. it's
My
not-
agenda is noted as an action item.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
It says voice vote required on my notes. Okay, so we don't, okay.
Yeah, the committee understood the item 10 was going to be under determination and discussion.
Right.
Okay, it just said there's a voice vote required on my director's agenda, or president's agenda.
Is that on the budget or?
No.
It's on my
This is the
crib sheet.
president's agenda, Director List, so. Okay, so maybe moving on to the arrears management program, just a little background for the board. Back in December 2020, the board adopted a policy establishing an alternative to water shutoffs for delinquent single-family residential accounts. This policy was implemented recognizing the human right to water. The program was supposed to begin after the COVID emergency ended back in February 2023, but was delayed due to the state's COVID arrears relief program. Just in terms of our delinquencies, this is not in the documents that we provided, but overall, 95% of our single-family residential customers are making their payments on time. And the total number of delinquent single-family customers post-COVID is less than pre-COVID levels. However, we've seen a significant increase in the accounts delinquent for more than 100 days, which has resulted in a significant increase in our arrearages. The single-family arrears management program addresses two categories of single-family residential homes, owner-occupied and tenant-occupied. And so you're going to hear from Andrew Lee on the different programs that we have. And what we're seeking this afternoon, the board adopted a board policy to place delinquent accounts in collections no later than 3 months after the installation of a flow restrictor, if that were necessary, when there is continued non-payment. And so again, today, we want to share with you not only the progress, but get some direction from the board on what that collections process will look like. And then there's a couple of other items that we'd like to get board direction on as well. So with that, Andrew, please take it away.
Great. Thank you, General Manager, for framing up the discussion. I think you probably covered a lot of my background slides already, so I'm just going to get right to it. Okay, so here's the agenda for today. First, I'm going to go over some background on the alternative shutoff program, as well as some of the details on how we're taking approach to addressing the debt that the customer have for over 100 days. And then I'm going to look at with you the arrearage trend and also what we have been doing for the last 6 months to manage that customer debt. and then also share with you some of the observations we have seen for the last 6 months in implementing the program, and then look at some recommendations of getting us to the next step. So again, I think the general manager has mentioned a lot of these talking points here. So we all recognize that, the water is a human right and is essential to life. And COVID definitely helped us, underscore the importance of water. And we also know that at least based on the data we have been seeing in the past, that water service terminations has disproportionately affected customers in the low-income communities. But yet we do live in California, and we do have to be responsive to Proposition 218. And what that means is that every customer has to pay for the cost of service. And with all that in mind, the board have directed staff to look at a more progressive alternative to address delinquencies, an option that is outside just the standard water service shutoff. So again, in December 2020, the board adopted a resolution with these principles in mind. First is that ensure that we have a comprehensive customer support program and be able to reach customers that are in need. Second is looking at implementing the use of flow restrictors, but only after the district have exhausted all our options to work for the customers to get them on payment plans or payment arrangements. Then we're looking at expanding the lien program. We currently have a multifamily lien program that we've been using since 2011, and we're expanding that to cover owner-occupied single-family residential customers. And then also ensure that the cost of the flow restrictor, also the customers that they have accrued, is not being subsidized by other customers. And place any delinquent accounts in the collection process after 3 months that into a collection process. And then ensure that we are issuing all the notices necessary to customers before we install the flow restrictor. There are circumstances where we will continue to use water shutoffs, and those circumstances are any kind of tampering with the device after it's installed to restore full water service. The second is any type of water theft activities. And the third condition is that where a customer might introduce another flow, unauthorized flow into the public drinking water system, that would cause a threat to public health. The original plan was to, based on the resolution, is that we would implement the program after the termination of the state of emergency. That took place on February 28, 2023. However, that step was postponed because of the expansion of the California Water and Wastewater Arrearage Payment Program. We also call it QWAP. And part of that is because for any agencies that is receiving that fund, we have to basically pause any kind of service interruptions during the time that we are dispersing that fund to customers. And the QWAP disbursement, we finished that in August 2024, which is about 7 months ago. And we were able to get the money to all the eligible customers. And because of that, our customers are able to receive about $20 million in QWAP relief fund. And during the same period too, about 3,000 eligible customers also received about $3.2 million from the low-income household water assistance program, which is funded by federal dollars. And those LIWAP or low-income households, they are income-based. So only certain customers who are income qualified can receive that assistance. So with all that behind us, in September 2024, and that's where we started our collection process to deal with the accounts that are still delinquent and still holds an overdue balance. So this is a graph that is showing the trend for single-family residential accounts that are delinquent for more than 100 days. I just want to let the board know that some of these accounts that we're seeing here haven't paid a water bill since the beginning of COVID. So they've been basically for more than several years. As you can see, this segment of debt has increased significantly since March of 2020. And if it's not for the pandemic relief money that we got and also the LIWOP money that our customers got, this graph would be a lot worse, and we would be looking at an upward of about $50 million in uncollected debt. But even after receiving over $20 million in WAP relief and also $3 million in LIWOP money, our delinquent debt still hovering around $22.9 million, as you can see in that where the green box is pointing to. And with over 15,000 accounts that have been delinquent for more than 100 days. So to manage this debt, the district initiated 2 new collection paths. The first path is using the flow restrictor for renter-occupied properties to really send a signal to the customers to remind them that their responsibility to pay their water bill. And the second path is using the property tax lien authority that we have for owner-occupied properties. And I'm going to go through what each of those 2 steps consists of. And before I get to that, I just want to give you a kind of overview on these 2 tables and where things were, where we were at August of 2024. So is a pretty large amount of arrears we're looking at, about $22.9 million, and about 15,000 accounts that are delinquent for more than 100 days. And I listed the data by ward so you can get an overview of where things stand. As you can see here, obviously the majority of the debt and the customers that are delinquent are in Ward 6. So I'm going to walk you through the different, the 2 collection paths. I'm not sure you have a question or not. Sure.
Wait,
The previous slide?
Just on this slide, which is that repeatedly in all kinds of different contexts, we're told that most tenants don't have a water bill. So who is this?
These are people who are renting like a single-family setting,
It's owned by somebody,
owned by someone else, correct?
and that landlord is requiring the tenant to cover the water bill.
Correct. So this is our individually metered accounts that qualify as single-family residential customers. And they are, as the renter, they sign up for water service.
Okay, so what's the total number of accounts that are in that tenant paying the bill status?
Wow, it could be quite significant. I'm not sure if I have that exact number for you, but
So do you want to know how many
I want to know how many
tenant-occupied
people.
accounts we have in
Because
total?
we always say tenants don't pay their by and large, tenants don't pay their water bills, but that's not not in the arrearage, but aren't the water account holders that it's,
that is a true statement for multifamily setting where, where you have a master meter and where you have several hundred units.
So I'm asking for single-family residences, how many are tenant-occupied, single-family residences where the occupant, the tenant, is paying the water bill?
So do we know, do you have the number, what President Young is asking, do you know how many single-family accounts that we have that are not owner-occupied?
We definitely know how many single-family residential accounts we have. We have about 330,000+.
Right.
I don't know the breakdown on how many are owner-occupied versus renter-occupied because we need to look at the data in the customer information system to see if we can break out that data. Sometimes we do ask the customers, when they sign up for accounts, are you a owner or are you a renter? So we collect that data. We do collect that data. I'm just not sure if we can rely 100% on that data if it's accurate.
Yeah, so kind of what I want to know, is this 10% of our tenant-occupied single-family residences, or is it 5% or 1% or 30%? I just want to know, what are we, sort of what's the scale that
We'll see if we have that data, but we don't have it right now.
Yeah. why don't I look that up and see if I can address that, and or at least get close to get an idea of the kind of ratio between the two categories.
Yeah, I'd like to know, especially I'm asking about Ward 6, do we have any idea what the percentage or number of tenants or owners occupying the property who would be eligible to obtain or receive CAP assistance who are not currently doing so or receiving any assistance?
I would imagine definitely a portion of those customers would be eligible. And in all our outreach material to them, CAP information has always been included in that package, including in our, bill reminders and any of the material we use to communicate, even including the door hanger when we bring it to their home to let them know that the next steps of actions the district's gonna take. We are trying to expand that outreach to make sure that they get that message when we go out there, that there is help out there other than, not responding to East Bay Mud. There are a lot of options out there East Bay Mud would offer to either set up payment plans or enroll you on CAP to kind of lower your future water bills going forward. In terms of giving you a number, I wouldn't be able to give you a precise number on how many of those people that we outreach to would qualify on CAP on the spot. But we definitely are making every effort we can to make sure that they know that there's that assistance available to them.
So I think Director Gomez asked some similar questions, and while it sounds like we're making a yeoman's effort to contact people, I don't know if we're doing so in the most efficient, effective way. But it would be nice to know what steps we could take that might assist these folks and have impact on the arrearages. I think there are numerous opportunities with other organizations we could explore. I'd like to figure out, President Young, an efficient way to have that discussion with staff and proceed.
Well, I think Andrew is about to go through the effort, what we've been doing to get, what's been done up until now.
Yeah, I appreciate what's been done up to now. I guess what I'm saying is I think, based on my knowledge of my district, there might be some other great opportunities. And at some point, which is not clearly today, I'd like to figure out how we might
I mean, there's
interact
definitely.
that way. That's all.
And I think for that particular question, since both you and Director Gomez asked, we can come back to a future committee or board meeting to talk about our CAP outreach efforts.
I think
Thank you.
there are always opportunities out there.
You,
for us.
I heard you're making an effort and it is appreciated.
And we did an A/B test actually with a third-party outreach that didn't result in.
So I'm going to move to the next slide here. So I'm going to walk you through what Path Money looks like for tenant-occupied single-family residential accounts. So for those accounts, first of all, they would get a postcard reminding them of their overdue bill before we're taking the action. And for those don't respond to the postcard, then they would receive a follow-up interruption service order, basically 7 days before we would do a installation for the flow restrictor. But before then, we would go out there in person. This is a new step that we added into our collection path, and that was suggested by the board when we adopted the resolution at the back in 2020. And this is an in-person contact with the customer where we actually knock on the door and leave a door hanging with all the different material that are available to them, and also all the programs we have available to them to get for financial assistance. So after that, and if customers still don't respond, then that's when we return 2 days later to install the flow restrictor. So that is the entire collection path for the flow restrictor. So as I have mentioned in the earlier table, that we have about 10,800 accounts that are delinquent for more than 100 days, and they're subject for this collection path. And then because of this sizable backlog we have, we are focusing on the initial 2690 accounts that have actually a delinquent balance of greater than $2,000. And this group of customers make up about $8.5 million of the total arrears, so it's pretty significant.
Yeah, Director Odie?
Dr. Owen?
Back to that, so out of this 2693 guy, you can go back to your other slide because it's there too. But you mentioned on the graph that there's people that haven't paid since COVID. Do you know how many of these 2693 haven't paid since COVID?
Not off my head right now, but I can get that information for you.
Okay, because I mean, 4 years is a long time to not pay your bill. I can understand people falling behind and people maybe having an unpaid balance and they're paying currently, but again, 4 years. Be curious to know, thanks.
Absolutely, okay. So this is a kind of very high-level summary of our progress so far after 6 months of implementation. So from this initial group of 2693 customers, we recover about $2 million in payment. And just want to make sure that you know that this doesn't include any active payment plans, so they still continue to pay towards their debt. Overall, we are seeing about 64% recovery rate based on the number of customers responding to our engagement effort and making some kind of payment arrangement. So what is concerning too for us is that there are about 350 customers, about 40% of them are living with a flow restrictor. And
So Andrew, just go back. We don't have flow restrictors on 10,792 accounts. We only have them on the 2,600.
that's the group we are working right now on, but we actually put in about a little bit over 1,000 flow restrictor to date.
Okay, all right.
So we haven't got through the whole backlog. We do have a long way to
Okay.
go. Okay. So, and out of that 350 customers, there are about 79 of them are actually have been living with a flow restrictor for more than 90 days already. So over 3 months, they are basically just living with a flow restrictor and not being responsive to anything else we sent to their residents. And based on the resolution that adopted by the board, this account that is being non-responsive to the flow restrictor for more than 90 days are supposed to be sent to collections. And we're going to have a discussion about that during the recommendation phase of this presentation here. And so by applying the same math that you see on this table here, we could see as many as 1,600 more accounts that would be just living with the flow restrictor if after we get through the entire backlog of that 10,000 customers. So for collection path number 2, for owner-occupied single-family residential accounts. So it's very similar in terms of where we start. They're going to start by getting a postcard reminding them of their debt. That postcard for this collection path was sent back in August 2024, right after we finish up the crop relief month distribution. So if they do not respond to the postcard, then they would get an intent to lien and a hearing notice from EBMUD. And that notice was sent back in October. And if they don't respond to that, then we start filing liens on the properties. And we began filing liens back in November last year. And so for those who do not clear the liens before May this year, then those amount will be transferred to the property collection process. So the board will be holding a public hearing in July this year. And then after that hearing, then any debt that are lien on a property that's not cleared by the property owner, those would then be transferred to the property tax roll by August 2025. So there are about 4,270 accounts that are delinquent for more than 100 days, and they are subject to this collection path. So here's the progress so far for this collection path. We are seeing some early successes, and during the past 6 months, we are seeing a 68% response rate, and we have recovered nearly $2.8 million from this group of customers. So far, there are about 570 accounts on payment plan they have defaulted on their payment plan. And what that means is that we will follow through with a lien process for those 570 accounts. But based on our experience on the multifamily lien program, we are projecting that we're going to recover a majority of this debt here. For our multifamily lien program, we're looking at a recovery rate about 90% or so. So we're expecting the similar results here. Director Lewis?
Help me here. So if someone is a renter or a tenant, they don't own the property, how are we transferring the lien to the property tax rolls and making sure it goes to that individual and not the property owner?
We won't.
This is only for owner
Yeah,
occupied.
this is only for
Thank you.
owner occupied.
Thank you, you helped me.
Okay, and we do a very intensive vetting process to make sure that, the owner's not paying for the renter's debt, vice versa. Okay, so,
And for multifamily rentals, though, the owner would get,
correct, because the owner is always the,
The lien would
record,
be on their
record,
property.
the account holder, basically. They sign up for service.
And we already do that on a every year basis already.
Yeah, we've done that for nearly 15 years.
okay.
So here's a map. Just going to give you a visual of where we have been installing the flow restrictor through February of this year. Not a big surprise here. The concentration of those installations are mostly inside or near disadvantaged communities, and which is highlighted in that kind of hatch mark, and kind of dispersed among the 7 wards. And then the second map here is a visual of where, where we've been finding the liens throughout the 7 wards. You can see here it's more distributed among the service area, but you can still see the concentration of it is still within the disadvantaged communities. So you saw a graph earlier, and this is a continuation of that graph you saw earlier. And of course, this is including 6 more months of implementing our new collection process. So after 6 months, we saw the tenant occupy accounts arrears drop by over $7 million. And the owner occupy accounts arrears also dropped by about 2.8 million. So nearly about $10 million recovered during the last 6 months or so. But more importantly, the number of accounts that are 100 days and over delinquent, that number dropped by nearly 50%. Now, I do want to say that, we have a lot more work to do here, and we're definitely not there yet. And as of this morning, when I checked the data, we reduced the total arrears by another $1 million this morning. And that's because what you see here is up through February, so we have now included March into the picture now.
We're adding about $1 million.
Yeah, but I want to just make sure you know that, at some point, you're gonna see it's gonna level out this chart here. As you can see, prior to 2020, you see we're fairly flat in terms of the amount of arrears we carry. We're gonna see similar. We just don't know where we're gonna start flattening out because we haven't gone through the entire backlog yet, right? So at some point, it's gonna level out on
Yeah,
this graph.
but what you're saying is what you have this morning, it's another $1 million decrease.
Correct.
Decrease.
Yeah,
Decrease.
because this does not include March.
But are there arrearage decreases, what am I trying to say? The same through all the districts? Or no? There's some districts we're not seeing the same kind of reduction trend.
I didn't catch that question.
So you're showing me the delinquency and arrearage trends. I'm wondering what that trend, is it consistent throughout all of the districts, or is it different district by district? So for
Or by
instance,
ward.
Word by word?
Yeah.
Oh. We probably can take a look at that data in more detail, but this is just for the district overall.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
So,
Do you have a guess about where you think it'll level off?
I'm afraid to give you an estimate, but
Well, it's still a pretty steep curve right now,
Yeah.
right?
it's a steep curve.
And this is just this is the total universe of 11,000
Yeah.
accounts that is, you're reporting here, not just, or not, yeah, the total, sorry,
I mean,
the total 11 and 4, it's 15,000 accounts. This is about 15,000, the 15,000 single-family accounts.
Yeah, I would say, again, Andrew and I have talked about this one, and again, I think it's anybody's guess. I mean, just, roughly looking at the trends, I don't think it's going to level off at pre-COVID at 3 million. I think we'll probably level off, my best guess is around the 6 million range, about double our pre-COVID. But again, it's anybody's guess, and I know Andrew doesn't want to put it out there, but that is what he and I discussed this, and that's where we think it might land. But we neither of us believe it's going to land at 3 million.
but we know where our goal is. Our goal is to try to get back to that range.
Pre-COVID,
That's the goal. Okay, so for the last 6 months, we've been really paying very close attention to progress, of course, and so here are some observations we have so far during the last 6 months. Now, I just want to just draw your attention to the pictures to kind of give you an idea the extent some customers would do to restore service. One of the picture here, you just basically, they remove our meter and put a hose connecting the two ends of the pipe. And then the other one is just basically try to break the device off and try to restore water that way, but they weren't successful. In those circumstances, obviously, we go out there and shut off, lock, and, stop the flow. So other observations we have seen so far, obviously, installing the flow restrictor requires a lot more time and resources than the shut-off. Start off by it would require anywhere between 20 minutes to 90 minutes to do installation, depending on the condition of the meter, or if you have to dig out the dirt or something like that inside the meter box to get access to the meter. And then, of course, it would a traditional shut-off would take about 5 minutes or so in the past, and so it's a big jump in terms of the resources and time. It also requires 2 people to do the installation and removal, 1 person to do the actual work, the meter mechanic, and then we also have the field services rep going out there to perform the customer service function of things, to engage with the customer. One thing that we didn't anticipate, but it happened, that we have several accounts after the flow restrictor that were installed have shown significant amount of water use increase. And there's one account I was looking at this morning, they are using about 1 unit of water a day. That's about 700 plus gallons a day. And that, I did the calculation, it goes back, we calculated back exactly to about 0.5 gallons a minute for the entire day. And that's that's the flow that we designed for the flow restrictor. So
what, they're filling bathtubs and
It's-
barrels and,
possible. We don't know exactly what they're doing.
or a
behind
hole in the
door.
backyard?
But
People are coming over
it's, but definitely, for us, is something not right there. Okay, and then, we added the in-person outreach step to the collection path. And interestingly, the whole idea was trying to increase engagement with customers, but the result has been the opposite. We haven't seen a lot of customers coming out and engage with us and try to sign up for payment plans or seeking assistance from EBMUD. So we definitely try really hard, because every time before we install the flow restrictor, we do knock at the door to make sure we get a chance to talk to the customers about it. And one positive note that we've been seeing, a good trend that we're seeing, is that we're seeing a big increase in customers asking for payment plans in the call center. I think before September last year, we were looking at about anywhere like between 1,800 to 2,000 payment plans a month. But since then, we are seeing in upwards of 3,000 to 3,500 accounts, asking for payment plans. So basically, customers are responding to the engagement process and want to work with us to settle the bill.
And do we automatically determine cap eligibility
We
as
send-
part of that?
We send them the information. We definitely send them the information to make sure they apply for CAP. And we do the referral process because now we have a independent working CAP group. So now those costs get transferred to the CAP group for the CAP process, application process.
I think President Young, though, was asking to the people who are responsive to the outreach and are taking advantage of a payment plan, are we affirmatively also evaluating them to determine if they might be candidates for CAP plan at that time?
We definitely make sure they know that CAP is
Are
available to them.
we affirmatively evaluating whether they are candidates for CAP at the time we work with them?
I do not believe we
What-
look at their application on the spot
Why not? I mean,
because.
if we're trying to figure out whether somebody is, they're gonna be on a payment plan, if we can figure out that they're eligible for CAP, then at least on the going forward basis, because they still have a water bill every, month in advance, even if we don't apply it retroactively, which is a separate issue, whether we have those funds or not. I'm assuming we don't quite have those funds. Affirmatively going through the application process, on the phone when we're talking to them about the payment plan, if I'm assuming that the payment plan gets established via a phone call. I know that we require people to send something in, but if there was a way that while they were on the phone, they could text a photo of their, CalFresh card or their, whatever that would automatically signal that they're sort of categorically eligible for CAP, that they couldn't just be enrolled in CAP, right on the phone.
Yeah, the CAP application review is a different process but I
Let's
guess,
just think about,
Yeah.
is this an opportunity and an avenue to start that?
I definitely get
process and
the what you're saying.
Yeah.
We definitely could look at a way to improve that process, so we're not creating another path for them to get on CAP. I get.
So, so I think, Andrew,
We
I
also
think
get
what
a
the,
captive
what the
audience.
request is, and I think we can do is instead of just referring them to the CAP group, work with them on the spot, and if they're able to, get them signed up for CAP as soon as possible, and not say, well, if you call this number, you can sign up for CAP. So let's work on that process.
Yeah, 'cause,
We got a captive audience. You
Yeah,
gotta
because remember,
remind
most of these people are used to having a phone call like that and being on hold for 2.5 hours
Got it.
before anybody answers, right? That's the experience that exists in the world at the county, right? Is that, you're gonna call and, oh, it's some other department, or it's this, or it's that, and we can take care of it on the spot.
I think it's a great suggestion, and we are gonna really look at how we're gonna work, with the two, Latrice and Sherlyn, to make that process better for the customers when they do call, so,
Super.
okay?
Director Gomez?
So thank you so much, Andrew. This was very informative. And a couple questions. Have we figured out how much are we spending on this new effort? And what is the actual benefit to us? In other words, like, we're spending X amount more, and we're only recouping X number of millions, so what's the delta?
Are you asking about how much we're spending on,
Yeah.
each installation for flow restrictor versus how much?
Well, you mentioned that you have found that it requires two people to do certain things, and putting a flow restrictor costs a lot more. So I'm just wondering if you've done that calculation of how much more we're having to spend to implement this program.
We have looked at that. I don't have that in my pocket here on the calculation.
And we could provide a number, but the whole purpose of the program, we knew going into this would be more expensive than our process. It was more about the recognition of the human right to water, but we can share that number with you, but that was not part of the calculus of why we did this.
Yeah, I was just curious if there was a proportional, like, we doubled, and are we recouping, how much are we recouping versus how much we're spending? The other question is, do we know what percentage of these customers are living below the federal poverty line? And it kind of ties in with the cap question, but it's like, I'm looking at questions of equity, and it seems like for some of these customers, there's such a struggle, and
Definitely, I mean, going back to the first map you saw earlier, I suspect a lot of them are in that category, in income, because, based on the census data we have collected so far, that the hatch mark, people, the household that live in those, areas where is that gray hatch would be considered low income and below certain poverty guideline. But I don't have an exact number, but I'm suspecting a majority of them, would be in that category.
Which goes back to the almost kind of categorical enrollment. If you're in, if you're in a area that is considered a disadvantaged community, a 535 community, which isn't just income, but, income plus others that we, is there some way we could put people in CAP and say, you have 30 days to send your application in as part of doing the payment plan, so that we automatically, lower the, what they're responsible for every month by the amount that they're getting as a credit on their going forward water bill? It might require board action, but.
Yeah, I'm just making a note, sorry, didn't respond. I'm making a note, we'll look into this and we can bring that back.
thank you.
Okay, so this is my last slide, in terms of recommendations and how we're gonna move this thing forward. So the recommendation is to continue to implement the program with some modifications. You heard that there are a number of customers are not responding to the flow restrictors. And so here we're looking at a couple options on how to deal with those accounts that are not responding. One option is to look at adding a live collection process through our third-party collection agency. Now, that process may require some legal actions on the vendor's part, and that will ultimately get to a, basically get to a wage garnishment process to ensure that they collect the debt. So I know this is a very, serious decision, and it has really great impact on the customer's side. And, the other option is that, go back to the way that how we handle, debt collection pre-COVID, which is shut off the water service, close the account, write any balance off to a collection agencies, and have them collect on the district's behalf. That's the two options that we can see. And then also add a shut-off process for accounts.
But maybe before you move off that one, so I think that's the important one. So the current policy is to go through the collection process after 90 days, 3 months. And so we're seeking clarity on what that would look like. I know many of our staff, we don't really want to shut off anybody, but we're at this point where these are the only two paths that we have. I also want to highlight that last bullet, point 2, because it's very related to that first recommendation. Andrew and I, I have spoken with a number of people to see, is there another engagement process that we can do with a third party for customers that do not respond to the flow restrictors 90+ days in lieu of a water service shutoff? We've met with a few people, they didn't have any immediate solutions for us, but they were willing to work with us to see if there's a solution. That's the first part. The other part too is, if this is, just for now, temporary, you heard from Andrew too, that, we still have a backlog of kind of COVID delinquencies. It would also be, there's some potential advantages to try to clear that out, just get back to a pre-COVID level, more of a steady state. Right now, we're playing catch up because we had to wait so long to implement the program because of the COVID and the COVID relief. So just those are just considerations as we think about which approach to take. And maybe we'll start with that one because that's and then we can hit the other two items afterwards. But it'd be good to get some direction from the board of which collection path you would like us to pursue.
This is for the first bullet point.
For the first, and the two sub-bullets, yes.
Like the board president, I'm in my mind shaking my head even though I wasn't physically. So I do not like these choices. I understand that it's important for staff to present, the status of this program so that we're being fiscally responsible and balancing those duties with our need to be responsible for the well-being of our community. It was a point of pride for our agency to recognize a human right to water and do everything possible to avoid shutoffs and being the first agency to, on a broad scale, implement the flow restrictor technology to avoid that is a vision I would like to follow through on and use to its fullest extent and understanding that a day without water is a day without sanitation, a day where families and children could go thirsty and be at greater risk of health and safety. And even though we're not in a pandemic emergency, I still feel like that's important. So I lean towards maintaining the water on with a flow restrictor until we continue to exhaust problems that are simply intractable and we have no other choice. And even then, I still want to explore all options. At the same time, I don't like the idea that we would be advancing a vulnerable customer into a third-party collection process where a debt collector is less likely to be very sensitive to the customer's situation, and could proceed to garnish wages. There are some protections under the law that limit garnishment to 25% and a little bit less depending on the housing situation and child support, but it is still not ideal. So I want to put some of those, Sophie's choice views into words here. So I think letting customers know that we have these options around, to help motivate them to engage, is interesting. I'm really interested in this new engagement process and what we think that could accomplish. I still want to, understand this better before we go down this road. I'll stop there.
And maybe just to respond, so a little bit additional information. So we had met with the UCLA Lufkin Center to discuss the process. If we did this, it's not something that he could come up with a solution very quickly. It could take many months, maybe half a year of working with them or longer. And so just a consideration, during that period of time, these bills can continue to accrue.
Yeah, why don't we just go down the line?
I'm very mindful of us being fiscally sound and making sure bills are paid for. I'm also very mindful about whatever we do. I don't want to impact customers so that it affects their ability to make a living and get paid and have jobs so that they can pay us. I don't want to squeeze a rock. I mean, if it's not there and I can't get it, I don't want to create further impediments. Somehow, I'm asking you to take all of that into consideration, but then figure out for us to get paid. I do want to compliment you on all the things you listed and all the hard work you were doing for outreach. I do, and I think Director Gomez and I also believe there are things we can do to assist you and help you. And we take very seriously the fact that we were elected to represent folks and help folks, so we're here to do that, and I look forward to working with you to do that.
Andrew, thank you so much for everything, as always. You have given us I'm looking at two recommendations here. And I'm wondering about the timeline, do we have experience with both of these recommendations? Have we tried both of these methods and which one might have worked better? Do we have that sort of information?
I would say the second sub-bullet is something that we have done before pre-COVID, right? We have always, prior to COVID, we have a shut-off process before the board adopted the alternative to shut-off policy. And obviously, the recovery rate for that and response rate is pretty positive. We have customers respond fairly quickly, the turnaround time to set up payment plans or pay their bill. I believe is in the 90% range in terms of response rate from that process. Again, this is, now since we're using the flow restrictor, we are in a new landscape of how to deal with, the customers, because again, the underlying goal that we have is that we want to be able to provide access of water to customers. And that's what we're in business for. We're in business for access, water access. So, but at the same time, I think, we have the issue of Prop 218. We do have an obligation to collect.
We do.
And
Yeah.
so we're having, we're looking at balancing, the water is a human right and, Prop 218, the two issues here.
Of course.
And maybe directly, so I think the answer is we have no experience with the first sub-bullet item of collecting on a third-party account that's still active. But Andrew did engage with the people that we work with, and they said they can do it, but this is a process where they do it. As he said, we do have a lot of experience prior to COVID with the second sub-bullet. They did respond fairly quickly, but just recognizing in the policy where we said we would go to a collections process, what I had pushed Andrew for was, let's find a process where we can keep the account active and not shut it off, but still go to the collections process that the board had directed us to do after 90 days. And this was the only option that they came up with that they said they could do.
Okay, so, all right, then, I'm gonna go with option one.
Jen.
Thank you.
Whoops.
Okay, sorry. Just remind me, when we were having orientation, I complained about some issue I had to make a decision on. The person in the room said, well, that's why you ran for office, to make those decisions. So this is not a pleasant choice we have to make, but, we have to make it. First of all, I appreciate the work Director Katz and President Young put in on the customer assistance program, just putting that out there. I wonder, before giving an opinion, can we retroactive that? Or, and I guess maybe another question is, these folks that are in non-payment, are any of them CAP people, or are they just non-CAP? Because we talked about maybe enrolling them into CAP.
You mean retroactively giving them the CAP benefits?
Right. Okay, I see that now.
It's a small
It's a small
percentage,
number. Okay.
Less than 10%.
So I just wonder if it's possible to go back and be retroactive.
We have looked at that many years, not many years ago, I guess. I'm looking at 6-7 years ago. And retroactively applying CAP credit, I think there's something problematic with that, because the MUD Act requires us to determine the neediness of a customer before we enroll them into the program. Until that application process is taking place and the approval process is done, they're not being determined as needy. So maybe it's worth another look with the OGC, but we definitely have looked at that a few years ago when I first got on this job.
Okay. Well, I guess my preference is to not shut anyone's water off. So I think that's kind of in line with my colleagues here. This new engagement process, sounds interesting. I remember when I used to represent tenants, we'd sometimes find social service agencies or charities that would help pay some of the rent so somebody's not put out on the street. So maybe there's some, social service or nonprofit we could partner with to help take care of some of these past due bills, but, you know, I personally prefer a solution that keeps people's water on and at least gets them current going forward. And then, you know, I don't really have an idea on, you know, the existing debt, but, you know, maybe there's some way to adjust some of that off if they are, you know, a needy customer. Not a lot of good choices, but thanks for the presentation.
Director Gomez?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm curious about what other agencies are doing when they're facing similar concerns.
They shut off the service. We're the, I mean, as far as we know, we're the only agency in the country that's done something this full scale, so.
Everybody else started shutting water off after COVID.
Yeah, back in 2023, they started shutting off.
So I know that the issue of making it possible for customers who wish to make a contribution through their bills to help people who can't afford their bills, we haven't gone there yet. But it's something that I believe is being considered, at least legislatively, to allow us to do. But I'm wondering if that's something that we could implement even before legislation exists, like make voluntary contributions that could go into a pot that could help these people.
That's something Director Katz had asked about previously, and that's where we're looking into. But as you know, there is also legislation out there. There's one of two bills right now to look at a voluntary contribution from customers that can help with both arrearages and customer assistance.
So I guess my question would be, can we find out if we could perhaps implement such a thing ahead of any legislation at the state? Anything that would prevent us from doing that?
We're looking into that right now, so.
Okay. And then, question about language access. I keep harping on this, but, you know, when people don't respond to us over and over and over again, I'm wondering to what extent could language barriers be playing a role in whether or not people are responding, and how are we making sure that that's not the case?
It's a good point. I think if not all, but most of the material has been translated. And if it's not translated, like the entire document, we would give them a link to go to a place to see the translation of the language. And just for example, like a CAP applications is available in 7 different languages.
So yeah, so I guess just digging a little deeper into whether indeed some people just don't know what to do with what they get, that would be helpful. I totally concur with the CAP program and being able to presumptively, like enroll people and get their applications. And then a thought that came up, when people have leaks, we discount what they owe typically, up to 50% of what they owe. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we could discount or decrease what people owe by a certain amount, by a certain percentage, and then write it off.
Yeah, we do have a very good leak credit program, and I think you just mentioned it. And it's the delta, 50% of the delta of what they use from the year prior. If they have a leak, then we look at the new bill, subtract that from the old bill from a year ago, and we split the cost between the district and the customer. We do offer that, anytime when customers, identify to have a leak or we see something that's abnormal in their water use, that's always something that we would put, in front of them.
I guess I'm posing the thought that what if we were able to consider the debt, like that delta, the difference between what they had paid up until they started incurring the debt, and that could we basically rebate, discount, give them a break on what they owe and write off the difference?
I don't think so, but we can look into this. But I think what I'm just hearing, so far with the board members is maybe something more of, is there some other financial incentive we could provide these customers to say, look, maybe we'll try to discount your bill a little or provide some benefits if you sign up for a payment plan. Just so we can continue, you're trying to provide a suggestion for another engagement path. I think part of also the work that we want to do is to understand, from these customers they respond is, why haven't you responded to us? Because maybe there is something about our messaging, whether it's language or something else, that's not having them respond to us, because there is definitely a subset that aren't responding. And we can speculate, but we don't really know why they're not.
Exactly. So it's almost like giving people a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, not that they're not responding because they don't want to, but there's maybe a number of other reasons why they're not. So digging a little deeper would be helpful. So I'm basically not ready to like give you a yes on either of these recommendations.
Thank you. So at this point, if we are considering account third parties or going back to shutting off, I think that it would definitely behoove us to find out what type of programs are out there. 211, the different county programs, that there, but RCF, there could be some options for them to go to, and along with the suggestion of, okay, we have their attention right then and there. Okay. And they're in front of us. We can have their information. I don't know anyone around here who doesn't have access to a tablet or something like that that can function out there to get them applied on the spot if it turns out that they do qualify for our CAP program. I'm not under the impression that that might disqualify them from some other program, but if they don't qualify for CAP, they might be able to qualify for this. If we are collaborating with other organizations for different things, why not we do that here? And those are three different options we can just investigate. And if they can't do it, they might have access to programs that can help our folks in our counties respectively. So that's where I stand on it.
And I mean, I think there's certainly more to do, Director Smith, on that one. We have done some additional work to look at working with a CBO and having them communicate to at least, what they claim is the area that people will be familiar with them. We also did some other outreach where we would send a very empathetic message to the customers, and then we also had it where we sent a very stern message to the customers. The lowest response rate was from the CBO. Then the next lowest response rate was from the empathetic message from EBMUD. The highest response rate, over 50%, was a stern message. So, and we did a random study to look at this. This was also data that the Lufkin Center wanted to look at to see, because that was something that they've always wanted to do, but never had any agency try that, to say is, can different messaging? And so as we share the data, there might also be some suggestions, like maybe there's a better way of doing this. So I think this is part of our learning process, but we want to see, can different messaging, if they had a different like hear from somebody that's not the agency, can that improve the response rate? We're not seeing that right now, but that doesn't mean I'm giving up. We're going to continue to try to see, but that's the initial data that we have.
Okay, so then let me make sure I'm clear on this. It said that for continued non-payments with the flow restrictor already there, right? That's what we're talking about?
Correct.
I'm saying when we are there doing, installing the flow restrictor, switching things out, that could be in connection to getting the flow restrictor as opposed to it being shut off. This is how we can work this out to get you caught up. So I think that might get a person's attention if we're right there and look, we're trying to help you out, but we have to put this flow restrictor in.
Yeah, so that's already part of the process. So
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So
The fact that we're there and we're doing the flow restrictor part, it's like, get that information, set this up with them at that time.
yeah, so that's already part of the process. I think the difficulty, we're talking about the group of people, despite all these efforts, they're not answering the door, they're not answering the phone, they're not answering any of our notes. This is a group of people that aren't responding to us at all. in any fashion, whether in person or not.
So there is a just to be clarified, there's a customer service representative and a meter mechanic whenever the flow restrictor is involved. The customer service representative walks through all of the options that the customer has for, addressing the issue, including if they agree to a payment plan on the spot, the flow restrictor doesn't get put on, correct?
Is
that right?
The flow restrictor does get put on because the orders have been issued. But we would, expedite the removal. And the thing is though, is that in terms of the number of people actually are engaging with us is very low at all.
Right, you said that before, so I get that, but there's a few. So it sounds like, again, this is maybe a Luskin Center, although, or somebody also think that there are organizations that, like BASIS, Bay Area Community Services, and others that are, sort of very good at the, kind of balance between intervention and support, that we could be talking to versus just quote-unquote CBOs. I mean, I think there's CBOs and then there's CBOs. Did you have more comments, Joey? Okay,
No,
since
not this
take my crack at this, is that I do not want to see people's water shut off. One question I have, Andrew, and I know what you've been slogging through for the last 5 years on this. It's hard to believe it's that long, but what's the largest amount that what's the top of the line in terms of how much money somebody's behind
For
on?
one account,
Yeah,
I've seen as much as $40,000.
$40,000. And that's somebody in a disadvantaged
No.
community?
Definitely not that location.
That's a tenant occupied
It's-
or an owner occupied, in the tenant occupied space
That's what our data show is a tenant occupied space in Alamo.
in Alamo. Okay, all right. Outside of Ward 2.
So we've had, I've seen tenant occupied in Oakland. I think, I forget, the home's value, but it was in excess of $10 million, and it was tenant occupied that had, I think it might have been the second largest arrears that we had.
$32,000, that's the,
Okay, and then what's the, so I'm not worried about those folks. They're making choices and living with those choices. I'm concerned about the person who this amount ends them up in Chapter 7 or worse, sort of lands them out of their home. And wage garnishment at least does, as Director Cass said, it does have a limit in terms of what they'd, and I guess that's where I am. I don't want to shut off water service.
So you want,
On bullet 3, though, I mean, that makes me feel like that person isn't really holding up their side of the bargain. Where we got the flow restrictor, we got the payment plan, they defaulted on the payment plan, and they're now unwilling to work with the district. Maybe that goes to live account third-party collection rather than a shut-off, and maybe the flow restrictor gets put back on. I know that it's expensive when you go back and forth doing that. I think we have to figure out a way, though, to clear the backlog and start, whatever the Luskin Center comes up with or whatever we have going forward to maintain the human right to water, on a going forward basis. Figure out how that COVID backlog can be taken care of, because I do think that, the $40,000 customer is a scofflaw in my view. That owes that much. They're just bilking us, and maybe we should, figure out what we can do to, I know it's somebody in your ward, Director Gomez, but there's probably somebody in my ward that.
Number two is in your ward, so.
Number 2 is in my ward. Number 3 may be in my ward, but they are taking advantage of us, and taking advantage of our goodwill. And so I don't want to be gentle with them, but I think there are people that definitely struggled through COVID and are still struggling out of it, and were struggling before COVID. That we have a program that would help them if we could sign up everybody. And I'd love to sign up everybody, all 30,000. I can't wait to see the exploration of what we can do in terms of an opt-out contribution to paying off, to contributing to others. So that's where I'm at. Do we have to vote on this? We don't have to vote on this.
Well, I think it would be good to vote and to give us direction, but maybe I need to clarify what I think the direction is.
Exactly.
So I will,
What I'm hearing is that there's a slim majority to the, looking at the live account, third-party collection process and keeping those accounts active.
and on top of that, what I'm also hearing is, I mean, we'll move forward with that. I think what we could probably move forward with as well is try to get people signed up, at least for the CAP program, as quickly as possible. And then I don't want to create too much hope, but also look for some opportunities to see if we can forgive a portion of the debt. But I don't think that's possible, but we'll look into it.
Yeah, but I think the automatic enrollment in CAP would put people at the point where their payment plan is basically paying their water bill on a going forward basis, and half of it is going to their arrears, right? For a lot of people, so.
It will be a significant help.
For customers who are in a payment plan, I understand that it can sometimes be, a very small amount. The goal is to engage the customer in some minimally affordable amount of a payment plan, so that they make regular payments. They're engaged with us as a customer. It could be far less than the normal bill, right?
So, I mean, we always have taken the position that we want to make it as flexible as possible for our customers, because we know every person's financial situation is very different, right? So we have been working with them, and thank you so much to our Sacramento office to help us making change, get the authority to change the MUD Act to allow us to extend our payment plan out further than the 12 months that we had originally. So it made our, job easier. It actually make our life, the customer's life easier in terms of setting up the payment plan. The thing is, our goal is to get them, be able to pay the current bill and the future bills, and then tag on a little bit of the payment plan so they can continue to keep current. And like I said, we always maintain the position of trying to get them something that they can work with.
Yeah, so that's, thank you for clarifying that. So I think the goal is to, bring our customers back into that payment plan, back into that kind of standing. It may not be the full good standing of no arrears whatsoever, but the good standing of being current on a payment plan. And then we wouldn't be doing the referral to third-party collections for a customer who's back in their payment plan, right?
Correct. As long as they are engaging with us, they're responsive to their payment plan, whatever amount that we agree to.
So, yeah, I think finding consulting our service providers, CBOs, not necessarily advocacy, only CBOs, but CBOs who have expertise in providing direct service and the resources at the Luskin Center, finding the right messaging and engagement protocol to convey that stern message that if you don't come back to your, most affordable, feasible payment plan, that you will be referred to a collection process that would be, that would be more, difficult. I think that figuring out what's the protocol that balances what the board has been talking about, I think that's the goal. And with that exploration, I think that that's the better approach as opposed to putting out the shut-off. Of course, a customer could be counseled on their choice to terminate the account if they didn't want to, incur the possibility of the monthly service charge and, et cetera. I think they should be reminded of their choice, their option to end the account, but I don't think we should lead with that. I think we should always aim to help customers keep the water on. I'm really glad to hear other board members coming in on retroactivity application of CAP. I think that's a bigger conversation, and I understand that we would need to qualify a customer for a given historical time period.
Andy, we went down the road. So folks have shared, I capsulized what I thought the direction to the general manager is. So if you have something that's new to add.
Yeah, I'm adding something that's new about the legal issue that you thought might be in place. I think that the way we address that is still looking for documentation for the applicable time period. And that would be a way to deal with it. I think the concern that we had heard when proposing it before was the concern of a perverse incentive to never enroll in CAP and to just rely on retroactivity. I think we should be able to find a way to address that. That's not the exact subject that's in front of us, but I think it's a tool that we should use. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Director Lewis?
Really quick question. I don't know. I know, for instance, in Ward 6 and for folks getting water and in Oakland, there's a pretty significant connection fee that's on that bill every month. And what does that look like? What do they owe us versus what they owe overall from a collection standpoint and their ability to pay? I don't need an answer right now, but I want us to also think about that because I know that's a significant impact for folks.
That arrearage does include that amount that's owed to the cities,
You're talking
right?
about the sewer service charge.
Yeah, the connection fee is not insignificant. So.
Well, you mean the sewer charge from
service charge.
Oakland?
Right, and we're collecting it for them, so if it's an arrearage.
Yeah, it's
for the-
counted in the arrearage. So we have a bill to pay to Oakland.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, can we also be creative in thinking about that impact? I don't know. No answer today, I just wanted to throw it out.
They haven't come a knocking, have they?
No.
I have another no answer today, but something I want to bring up. So just in terms of the two options, the wage garnishment and how long that would take and what the process of that might be. I don't know if you have to go to court. You can tell me later, Andrew. It's fine. Yeah.
Just if we can
Thank
get
you.
an info memo on
Yeah,
the,
we can do that. But what I'm hearing, again, thank you, President Young, for summarizing, is for the collection process, go with the process that keeps the water on. And then as far as I guess the second bill or third bill, I think, President, you talked about people who default on the payment. That one, I'm not clear on what the board is. Are they going with the staff's recommendation or an alternative?
I think perhaps that we need to have some sort of case-by-case criteria that we develop. 'Cause I don't know that everybody's in the same boat on that one. There may be different cases. I mean, there may be, there could be something about just fear of eviction or other things that are driving, as Director Gomez said, people to make the decisions or they may just be testing us. So maybe there's some case-by-case criteria that could be developed, whether to send them into the live account process or treat them as if they've tampered with the flow restrictor.
So I have encountered one case where we installed a flow restrictor, they set up a payment plan, defaulted, went out there and set up, installed a flow restrictor again, wrote us another check, the check, bounced, again, repeated like 3 to 4 times. So I would say that would be kind of the unique situation there.
Yeah.
And I do understand that, every customer situation is unique. And I would say a lot of our customers generally want to pay their bill and they just want to work with us. And for those customers, they just need to engage with us. We will find an option to kind of get them set up so they don't lose access to water, or at least maintain, that full flow of water going into the home.
Engage with that that are authentic, genuine, and with integrity.
It takes 2 parties to get this thing set up. We require them to talk to us and for us to respond to them.
Yeah,
So you have enough to go on?
maybe not quite enough, but I guess, yeah, I mean, case by case, I mean, are you saying,
No, I'm saying establish some criteria by
That's-
which to evaluate those cases.
okay, to determine whether or not we would
Which
extend
bucket
it
they end
or
up
shut them
in.
off, one or the other? Okay, and leave it to staff to make a decision?
Right.
Okay, very
I
good.
mean, do they, we don't want to make those decisions.
Okay, so we'll come up with our criteria
So do
where,
they end up in a bucket that's basically it's the equivalent of tampering with the flow restrictor? Because they're,
or as you said, maybe not holding up their end of the deal and being unwilling to work with us versus somebody that's truly trying to work with us, and we'll try to.
and is facing hard times and just, be honest with us and tell us what's going on, and we'll keep working with you.
Okay, that's clear now. And then the last one is, this only happened one time I'm aware of, but, when we used to shut off customers, I mean, we would have certainly people threaten staff. And if we had to do that, we would have them go out with either law enforcement or security. We had one instance with a flow restrictor now where we received an email threatening staff. Our recommendation there is in that instance, because it does take more time to go in and out, of course, we would not do anything that's unsafe for staff, but so that we can get in there and out quickly, we would just shut those customers off because it's very quick. And that's our recommendation. And that would go back to kind of the previous practice. So if that's okay with the board, we will implement that.
Agree.
I believe that's acceptable, yes.
I'd like to make sure that there's some appropriate opportunity for notice. I don't want to encourage this rare thing to, be on a customer's mind, but I also think that it's important for it to be, somehow out there, what our expectation is and what the consequences could be.
Is that in general or just on the threatening bullet point?
I
think if you threaten our staff.
Yeah, I think
I
it's.
don't think it's like you give a warning and then the next time.
Yeah, it's a consideration, so I don't have enough familiarity with the exact mechanics of the process and the customer interaction and how this is arising to know how that applies, but I think
Yeah, I think.
On the other hand, every single person that's in this situation has had multiple notice about what could happen if. So the point where they've threatened us, there's been a threat against our staff and we're gonna spend $500 to $800 to put in or take out the flow restrictor and expose that individual to 30 to 90 minutes when they could be attacked or verbally abused. No.
Zero tolerance.
Versus 10 minutes to,
Yeah, so.
disable the meter? I don't think there's any note,
Right, I'm asking, how do we provide, notice to the customer that discourages the activity and it puts them on notice about the consequences of that kind of behavior?
It'd be common sense not to threaten staff.
Yeah, it should be common sense, we're dealing with.
we're not in the business of telling people to behave themselves. I don't think we give, that's like telling, 99% of our customers, you better behave yourself when our staff comes, for the 1% or 0.1% that won't. That doesn't.
How much you have a mental health situation?
Yeah, I'm concerned about if we've set an expectation that we do not do any shut-offs at all, and then there's no notice anywhere that something like this could occur, that's a discrepancy in the information they're getting. So that, I'm asking, how do we communicate about our expectations and what their expectations should be?
I think, well, this is just my suggestion, but I think we should be most protective of staff, and we don't put notices out for that. We also don't put notices out to say, if you tamper with your meter, we're going to shut you off, or if you, if you're tampering with the meter, if you're stealing water, I don't think we need to, my personal opinion, I don't think we need to let the customer know, if you break the law, we're going to shut you off. If you break the law, there's a consequence. And if you threaten our staff, there's a consequence. And I don't think we need to, my personal opinion, I don't think we need to provide that notice. And we don't provide them notices, hey, if you steal your water, we're going to shut you off. The board knows that. We discussed that back in 2020. If you do certain things, you will get shut off. And there's no notice to the customer. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I agree with those norms. I want to make sure that all of our communications are consistent.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So I understand. Okay, so General Manager Chan, I understand that it should be without need to mention about if you steal water, you're getting cut off, whatever. I got that part. We've worked pretty diligently, at least Boots on the Ground Labor has, to try to make sure that our safety is included. And if it's just a little bit more ink on a piece of paper where they get notification about, you're behind in your payment and whatever. Even if it's just, I don't know, a watermark somewhere on a corner of that paper to let them know that they cannot be violent with our staff. It makes a difference. That little bitty reminder that you will be held accountable in one way or another if you harm our staff. So I don't know why that would be problematic to include in a message to them if we're already sending them a message.
So maybe when the flow restrictor is installed, something could say, we understand that this is a difficult situation for you and your family. And unfortunately, we've been left with no alternative other than to make this installation. Please be courteous and mindful that our staff are following directions of the agency. And we hope that you will treat them with, all due courtesy and respect.
That works. I mean, at the very least, the district is actually making that statement there.
I think that approach could work. I just wouldn't want to put out there that if you break the law or you threaten staff, that we'll do something.
Yeah, I would continue with a failure to do so could result in service termination.
Yeah.
And that's what I was looking for.
Okay. Thank you. I know this is a hard discussion, and I appreciate the feedback. This was important for us. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Moving on to the general manager report, we first have the water supply update. We have Roberto Cortez here to provide the better news.
Okay. Great. Good afternoon, President Young, Board of Directors. I hope you have enjoyed the last few days of spring. It's going to change a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but why don't we get started here? So I am going to provide an update on the current water conditions water supply conditions, and also what the latest projections look like. As always, we provide this graph. It's the gross water production graph. You could see in red, that's the current year. It's dropped a little bit. That's probably because we did receive some rain in March, in the early part of March. It got a little warm when spring hit last week, but we expect that to continue to hold a little bit low, just because it's going to rain a little more. Right now, through the 19th of March, the FY25 production is about 155 million gallons per day. This table here shows the current reservoir storage levels. We're doing pretty good overall for total system. We're 104% of average, 83% of capacity, and that's a pretty healthy amount. Overall, we actually gained quite a bit since the last report 2 weeks ago. This graph here, or this bar chart here, shows the amount of precipitation we have received in the East Bay. For the season, we have received 16.3 inches, which is 73% of average. For the month of March, as you can see there, last time we spoke, that was very low, but we've since gained quite a bit of water in there. And also, as I mentioned, there is another 1.5 inches of rain in the 14-day forecast. Starting, supposed to be a little trace tomorrow, but really starting Sunday into Monday and a little bit next week. So we should see that those numbers increase. Same story for the upcountry McCalmy watershed. We have received to date 31.6 inches of rain, which is 82% of average. Also, as you can see, March has been pretty good. We're almost to normal numbers there. And upcountry, as of yesterday, we are expected, the forecast has 5 inches, up to 5 inches of rain in the 14-day forecast. That would be starting on Sunday, extending through next Friday. So that will be very helpful. This next slide here shows the snow pack levels at Cable's Lake. As of the 19th of March, we were at 90 inches of snow, which is 127% of average. And also that storm that is forecasted is expected to add at least a foot of snow upcountry. Statewide, the snow pack is looking good as well. In the Central Sierra, it's 92% of normal. And also note that next week, DWR will be conducting its April snow survey. That number is helpful throughout the state and for us to determine where we're going to be in terms of true natural runoff for the year. Projection-wise, this is 8 to 14-day map that NOAA puts out. The green there, that covers Northern California, shows that we are expected to receive above average precipitation through April 2nd. That is consistent with all the most of the other models that we monitor and track. Precipitation projections here. The median line here in green, we're on track to hit almost 40 inches of rain for the year. We're currently, like I said, to 31.6 inches, so that we're tracking well. And finally, the end of season storage, it's changed to our favor. The wet and median year shows us as ending up with a full system. In a dry scenario, we won't be full, but you can see we're not going to be too far off from being full. So we are doing pretty good. And that's all I have.
Great.
Any questions? Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Next, we want to share with you the Community Water Academy. Just as a reminder, the Water Academy started a few years ago to educate community leaders and others about EBMUD. The next Water Academy starts next week. At your places is the list of the 35 participants in the Community Water Academy, and I'm going to pass off to Kelly to tell you a little more about this.
Okay. Thanks, Clifford. Good afternoon, President Young, members of the board. So as Clifford mentioned, we are about to kick off our third iteration of our Community Water Academy next week.
Marguerite, it's at the back of this.
You find them?
I've got too many pieces of paper.
Me too. So as you might recall, this is a program that we started a few years ago with the idea of giving certain folks in the community a deeper dive into our operations and our maintenance. We have two board members who went through the Community Water Academy. It's a way for us to kind of connect at a deeper level, and the hope is that then, once they have this kind of deeper grounding in how the district operates, that they can kind of, help share information in their communities and, kind of pass along those projects and priorities that the district is focused on. Each year we have about 35 folks in the cohort, and that is what we have this year, and you can see those at your places. Just to touch, oops, sorry. I forgot to, oh. There we go, I'm sorry. That was all the intro. No, I basically covered the slide. So the criteria is that, we aim for a diverse group of folks from across the district and from across all the different wards. We want folks from all kind of different professional and personal backgrounds, people who work in education, environmental, organizations, community-based organizations, and local government, of course. And so, the goal is, again, that they're able to amplify some of our messages and ideas and priorities out into the community. You'll notice this year that we actually have included a couple of employees in this cohort. We hadn't done that before, but we think that obviously, employees make up a really important part of our ambassador program, if you will. And so giving a few folks a chance to participate was kind of a change this year. We're also striving to make sure that previous cohorts continue to be involved. And so we are inviting them to some of the events this year, including the closing event on the last day, the fifth event. And so here is the schedule for the Community Water Academy 2025. We all also have identified where different board members have agreed to participate. I think with the exception of the last one, Director Katz, I think we're, as soon as you can decide on that, it would be great to have you at the closing session there where we have it at Berryman.
Agreed.
Oh, you did agree. Oh, thumbs up. Okay, perfect. And let's see, with that, any questions?
I want to say, I'm very excited about the new cohort. I'm very excited about the academy in general. It's fantastic. Kudos to all the work that goes into making it happen. And also, I realize it's a heavy lift for all staff because the cohort is accompanied by many of our senior folks along the way. So really, thank you for that investment in the cohorts. And just out of curiosity, how many folks applied this time? Did I miss that?
Yeah, I meant to mention that. So about 200 people applied, similar to last year.
Okay. Thank you.
Two of these, but none of them. Can you get me a
Do you want
list?
my list? You can have mine.
Okay, I
have
got two of
Kelly, I
these,
passed
but
it.
no, oh, wait, there it is, it's on the back. We're stuck to it. Okay, got it.
Any other questions?
When did it start?
Starts next week. It's for the 4 Wednesdays in April, with the exception of the what is it? The days 3 and 4, which fall in the same week, but is a Friday for the Hardy Dam and McCollum hatchery tour.
I have a quick question. Are you going to be at the pizza parlor again? Going to the pizza place? The last day?
We're the Vine Street, the old Vine Street pumping plant.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. It's a good spot.
Are we invited to that, or
Yes.
not so much?
Yes, as a past, yes, as an alumni, of course.
If you're interested in attending, I mean,
Yeah.
Director Cass will be there to address the group, but if any board member wants to, well, I mean, we'll have to make sure Brown Act, Risha's looking at me saying, no Brown Act violations. But it's a celebratory meeting, so I think it should be okay.
Yeah.
But
If it's a social event, I think it's okay. As long as there's no business conducted.
we just can't talk about East Bay Mud activities.
Oh, can't talk about East.
If you're
Bay
going to have a
at the-
quorum, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You said you had a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
So the next one.
Thank you, yeah. And the last one, we wanted to end on a high note, but
Yeah.
before we end on a high note, because you're not going to want to hear from me again, but at your place is the Speakers Bureau, and I'm just going to pass it off to Kelly to talk about the Alphabet Rockers and the song that we developed.
That's right. So I'm just going to do a quick little overview before Risha cues up the.
All right.
Okay, all right. Well, it's not often that we get to show a music video in a board meeting, so pretty exciting.
Well, did we get the reel too that was posted yesterday?
Oh, yeah, the reel too. I don't think we queued that one up, but maybe next time.
Check your
Social media feeds.
Instagram and Facebook feed for a reel of certain highlighted East Bay Mud staff
Yes,
performing some
certain
moves.
Staff, yes. So we partnered on H2O Flow with the Alphabet Rockers, which is a nonprofit in Oakland, whose work centers around social impact, education, music, and the arts. And so we worked with them and a fifth grade class from Piedmont Elementary in Oakland, a Title I school. We took them out to the watershed. They checked out a water treatment plant. They came back to the classroom, had a songwriting workshop. And, the result here is this, great song that, as of this writing, I just checked in with Catherine, has, I think, over 110,000 views on YouTube, which is pretty awesome. Again, it focuses on, the things that, that we care about, that matter to us in our education program, which is our high-quality water, the complex and amazing infrastructure that bring us that water every day, the workers behind all that, and of course, the protection of this most precious resource. So I hope you enjoy, and it will also be performed live at the Earth Day themed Oakland Roots game on April 19th, and we hope you can go. Thank you, and DJ Risha or Ramar, I'll turn it over to you.
Full screen.
Thank you all for joining us here today to celebrate the achievements of this commencement class. One of the
Where'd it go?
I'm here on a water education field trip at beautiful San Pablo Reservoir. We're going to be exploring where that water comes from. That's our drinking water. We're going to see the process and how that water is cleaned and treated and tested at the water treatment plant. And we're also going to learn about why it's really important that we take care of the environment here so that we have really good drinking water for a long time to come.
Love how the water flows. Let me color may bring the water all the way down to here. Yeah, yeah, another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah, another sip, sip, sip of the water flow. Yeah, yeah, another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah.
Surf clean from the streams, melt down from the mountain caps. Snow flowing all the way down the river, through aqueducts to the treatment plant. It goes. You can bet it measures up and takes steps to prep and test. Takes more effort than you think for us to get clean water to drink, because lots of things have to link way before it hits the sink.
We can walk while we talk and we learn all about the water flow. We can care when we share everywhere we got clean H2O.
Skip the plastic, cause we can tap that tap. Drink the clean water flow just like that. Filter, treated, tested, tap that tap. Protect the watershed, everybody say.
Another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah. Another sip, sip, sip of the water flow. Yeah, yeah. Another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we drench the scene with the lonely and plains. We walk dreams, cause it's a gift that gives. What I understand about the land is the hand that can, feeding all that is. Because every drop is a bop, play that tap, don't stop. In fact, the opposite is taking over our thoughts. For who we are, it's courageous. Solution comes in waves and stages. Make moves, it'll ripple through ages.
Take the time, get the line, you and I put the climate's water flow. Let the love everywhere that we share take care of H2O.
Skip the plastic, cause we can tap that tap. Drink the clean water flow just like that. Filter, treated, tested, tap that tap. Love the watershed.
Another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah. Another sip, sip, sip of the water flow. Yeah, yeah. Another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah,
Yeah, take care of the water like our community. Together, conserve it, protecting all we need. Promise for the future, this love, nurturing the roots of all us. Every living thing depends on what we do to prolong to belong.
another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah. Another sip, sip, sip of the water flow. Yeah, yeah. Another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah.
We don't want to speed it up, but the audience in Zoom, unfortunate video, the audience in Zoom did not get to see it, and this also did not get captured in our recording. So, we're going to play it again.
Okay, as long as the board members will do this. Actually, for all the staff that were in the video, get up and do your, I'm serious. Come on, we're gonna go through 4 more minutes of it. Let's see, come on. I know Catherine's there turning red.
I got it.
I think Andrea, you were in it, weren't you? You said you'd be practicing.
We're here on the water education field trip at beautiful San Pablo Reservoir. We're going to be exploring where that water comes from. That's our drinking water. We're going to see the process and how that water is cleaned and treated and tested at the water treatment plant. And we're also going to learn about why it's really important that we take care of the environment here so that we have really good drinking water for a long time to come.
Love how the water flows. Let my color may bring the water all the way down to here. Yeah, yeah. Another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah. Another sip, sip, sip of the water flow. Yeah, yeah. Another drip, drip, drip from the water flowing. Yeah, yeah.
Serve clean from the streams, melt down from the mountain caps. Snow flowing all the way down the river, through aqueducts to the treatment plant it goes. You can bet it measures up and takes steps to prep and test. Takes more effort than you think for us to get clean water to drink, because lots of things have to link way before it hits the sink.
We can walk while we talk and we learn all about the water flow. We can care when we share everywhere we got clean H2O.
Skip the plastic, cause we can tap, tap, tap. Drink the clean water flow just like that. Filter, treated, tested, tap, tap, tap. Protect the watershed, everybody say. With the lonely and plains, we walk dreams, cause it's a gift that gives. What I understand about the land is the hand that can, feeding all that is. Because every drop is a bop, play that tap, don't stop. In fact, the opposite is taking over our thoughts. For who we are is courageous. Solution comes in waves and stages. Make moves, it'll ripple through ages.
Take the time, get aligned, you and I, for the climate's water flow. Let the love everywhere that we shed take care of H2O.
Skip the plastic, cause we can tap, tap, tap. Drink the clean water flow just like that. Filter, treated, tested, tap, tap, tap. Love the watershed. The water, like our community, together, conserve it, protecting all we need. Promise for the future, this love, nurturing the roots of all us. Every living thing depends on what we do to prolong the belong.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, all staff. And Catherine's been very optimistic that we'll hit 1 million views by the end of this week, so.
Always got 2.
I know, I've watched it like 8 times. Okay, we are on to, I lost my agenda here. Board comments. Because we're not doing committee reports. So are there any comments from the public on the items in determination discussion? Online, otherwise, okay. Other items for future consideration, I think we covered those during the meeting. Director comments, if you've already submitted your written comments and reports to the secretary, please, if you have to share some verbal comments today, please do, but don't feel obligated to do so. Director Smith.
I did send it, but there's one thing I wanted to highlight. Not that they weren't all good, they were. But the Powerful Women of the Bay Awards and Luncheon was just absolutely fabulous. And as much as each and every one of those women were very, very worthy of being acknowledged, Latifah tore the roof off with her keynote speech, and it was wonderful to see a former East Bay MUD employee get acknowledged, the Honorable Lena Tam.
All right, that's worth saying something about, for sure.
Not so much a report, but just that, a remembrance that Cesar Chavez Day is on 3/31. We're not going to meet again before then, so just a remembering to honor such an incredible figure in our lives.
Go to Delano if you can.
Sorry, I had a busy couple weeks, so I'll try to be quick. On the 12th, went to the Alameda County Mayor's Conference. There was a presentation by LAFCO. Even though it was Alameda, I think it'd be good to have one of our board members at least try to get on LAFCO, especially the Contra Costa one. On the 13th, Ward 5 meet and greet, I can't say enough about the work staff did to help produce that wonderful event. Sun Quan did a great job. The GM answered a lot of questions that I couldn't answer, so I appreciate that. So just kudos to everyone who made that a success. Alameda County Special District Association later that night, Director Chen showed me around the property where we own everything, so that was nice. San Leandro Chamber of Commerce, State of the City, I was there for that. Alameda was really nice, also on the 20th. And then last but not least, the wastewater treatment plant tour. I want to give a shout out and thanks to the GM, also Amit and Yoon for all of their hard work and showing me around. I want to have my board briefing there. I was so impressed by that place, so appreciate everything.
I did a bunch of stuff, I'll write it up. And on April 26th, it's a while ago, I will be showing H2O flow at my granddaughter's TK class and doing a water cycle presentation. April, do you have anything? You don't have to.
Okay, I'll pass.
Director Lewis?
Oh, I also attended the Alameda County Mayor's Conference on the 12th. I also attended the Alameda County Special District Association dinner on the 13th. And on the 15th, I attended the Niagara Movement Foundation Gala for the annual Community Leadership Awards.
No comment today.
Great. Okay, with that, we are adjourned until our next meeting, which is the second Tuesday in April, which is April 9th, 8th.